Hello, and welcome to the show. This is just a short intro before we begin the episode, which I'm sure you will enjoy. We have a few things to share which are specials this weekend. If you're a writer and love the process and inspiration of writing on a classic typewriter, you can experience this magic opportunity by purchasing your very own typewriter. We do also have vintage or antique typewriters. Or if you already have a typewriter and it's broken, we are able to repair it so that your writing process can be that much more beautiful and enjoyable. Whether you're sitting at home or a cafe or traveling the world, you can now be motivated to write anywhere, anytime. Next, staying on the topic of writing. If you would like to purchase my poem book, they are now published and available. The Narcissist Recovery Guidebook, as well as the Grand Soul Awakening calendar collection of inner child poems on friendship and healing, as well as Divine Love Lessons, a poetic love story of returning back to your core self and a human journey of understanding your higher power, which has a touch of synchronicity, being numerology, ascension patterns, spiritual insights to soothe the consciousness and support the ego into pure, authentic soul growth. And it's a great gift for yourself or for a friend who appreciates the art of poetry. Next, you can order the personalized art painting, which is perfect for birthday gifts and holidays. And it's just a great opportunity to become creative and to inspire the younger generation or adults as well. And you can also decide which kind of art this is, which can be seasonal or biblical or a Disney character, so it's really anything that inner child find for. Next, tutoring is also available from grade school to middle school to high school to courses. We have both the math, reading, writing, essay help, resume help, college admissions, essay help, all kinds of tutoring. Last but not least, we have virtual ballet lessons and classes available for all ages and all levels. There are ballet bar workouts included, and all you need is just a little bit of space and a chair or something to hold on to. And this is going to be with accompanying classical orchestra music to bring a sense of levity and joy and just fun overall, while also strengthening the body and adding flexibility and grace to your daily posture. And I have a unique experience as I grew up performing at Lincoln Center with the York City Ballet, with my City Ballet, with Alvin, Ailey, American Dance Theater, and also at Madison Square Garden. So this unique mix of artistic expression has inspired me to create a whole list of ballet choreography, ballet classes, and to inspire people to come along on the journey to awaken their appreciation and their gratitude for body movement and body positivity. And I'm excited to share this with everybody, and everybody is open to join. It's available for everybody. And we focus on creating elegant movement to the rhythm of the music, which makes you feel comfortable in your own space, at your own pace, and in your own skin. And this gives you an opportunity to enjoy the journey of imagination, beauty, integration, and for you, a sense of gratitude for yourself, for others, for music, and for movement. Classes are in session and all are. And if you would like to have me on as a guest on your podcast and would like to be a guest on my podcast, please do let me know. And I am also collecting new interviews with upcoming. And for information on any of the things that I have mentioned, if you would like to participate in, or to purchase, or to just join the community, please send me an email at growth and grace mindset at gmail.com. tackle all of the logistics of how to play. Enjoy the show. Today we have a guest, Nate, a modern hunter-gatherer, paleo philosopher, and prophet of primal humanity and archetypal polarity. And he started building his philosophy around masculine order and feminine chaos as a result of a modern intergender situation, which is very interesting. The rejection of all social roles, the rejection of biological validity, the rejection of any traditional common sense around concept, growth, and understanding of men and women, humanity, and how in the world we're supposed to relate to each other. May decided that if the cultural ideas are falling apart, then he at least needs to have his own coherent narrative. He has always enjoyed learning psychology and talking to people about their thoughts, feelings, experiences. So he took what he knew about men and women and began piecing it together in a holistic way. Wow, what a beautiful kind of like integrated aspect. So welcome to the podcast. So excited to have you.
Yeah, thanks. It's good.
So talking about like philosophy and this whole idea of masculine and how a lot of men are actually awakening or evolving, which is beautiful thing to see because I feel like so often the feminines or the women kind of go through their awakening and then it's so refreshing when men also kind of go through that experience. And what made you kind of lean into this kind of spiritual awakening or spiritual awareness of this kind of like philosophical approach to life?
Wow, I don't know. I've always been an introspective kind of guy. Like, so exploring my own inner world, all of that. I have a lot of food messages. Everything world. So just being interested in psychology and how people work. I've always been drawn to the conversation. And so with all that on my mind for so long, for so many years, I had to connect with my philosophy.
Yeah, and that's really cool. I remember I posted something on my page and I think you responded and that's how I kind of reached out to see if we could talk about it. And what I asked was I asked on Twitter, how do you define the divine feminine? Because I love seeing how people kind of like respond to their interpretation because I feel like we each have such a unique interpretation of how we define certain things and it's like based on our experiences we put into practice and put into kind of like we decide how we define things. And you said that the divine feminine is the primordial chaos. Femininity is the traits and qualities which pursue alignment with the chaos. And at first I was like, oh, this is so interesting. And I never really thought about that. But it did take me back to like the biblical sense. And I remember how like we get from the Bible, it's like Eve. And she was given that kind of template of like the original sinner or something. So I feel like in a way, is that connecting to the Bible to kind of like, well, you said it's actually not about tradition, but how does the feminine negate chaos? Like, where have you seen it? Where have you kind of learned?
Right. So, man, it comes down to a lot of definition, right? So, female does not equal feminine. Female does not equal chaos. And like you quoted, the feminine is the traits and qualities that align with the chaos principle. So what is the chaos principle? Well, it's not original. This isn't building off biblical ideas. So imagine a caveman, a philosopher caveman trying to figure out the world in the Stone Age, right? He's looking around, and the natural world is a very symbolic place, especially if you don't understand quite what's going on. If you look at nature long enough, you'll notice two forces that are always contending but also complementing each other. And that's order and chaos. So chaos is the fluid, the ephemeral, the unstable, unpredictable, full of potential. It's the maybe factor, right? Order is the predictable, stable, the organized, the purposeful, that sort of thing. And so chaos isn't something bad. It's something fluid. And order isn't necessarily good, it's structure. And so both are completely important. Um, and so why femininity would be associated with chaos and masculinity with order? Well, when you look at just women in general, they tend more toward feminine aspects. And then a woman who has aligned herself with feminine principles has lived a more fulfilling life than one aligned with masculine principles. I think that's fair to say as a generalization. Of course,
Right.
women are more fulfilled by femininity and men by femininity, by masculinity. So we just naturally tend to align with those two differing principles.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. And I also think like if women would get over that idea of because when people kind of label the feminine as chaos, which I feel like a lot of women really do that. And they're gonna go into their like rebellious
Defensive.
what?
They'll get into defensive.
Right. Because it's like again, it's going back like historic time of where the feminine felt the shame of being crazy. So how
Right.
can women like see that and interpret that as a positive thing and not necessarily kind of like a negative?
Wow, that's a great question. It comes down to understanding a lot of the time. Like people assume chaos is bad and order is good, but that's we have an innate understanding that that's not true. Like every dystopia in fiction is either ultra ordered or ultra chaotic. It's like a post-apocalyptic world where there is no order at all, or it's complete order, like 1984, right? So you don't want the extreme of either. It's the mix of both that are kind of like dancing and contending with each other, but also complementing each other. And the opposing fortresses or opposing forces buttress each other. And so understanding chaos as a bad thing is either you're too far into order and you don't appreciate what chaos actually is, or you're too far into chaos and you're actualizing a lot of bad stuff because you're not anchored to order in any way.
Oh, I love
Yeah. So for women to appreciate and embody their chaos aspect, they really have to understand it first, and appreciate the healthy value of both order and chaos.
yeah, that's really great. And actually I was going through the archetypes, that's really with the women and there's also archetypes for men. So it's interesting that for example, like the ruler, that's the one that creates order for chaos. And the ruler is typically a little more like controlling and but there is a level of like organization and responsibility. And it does seem to be motivated by victory. So is this concept of order and chaos, is there a motivation that's like what is the kind of product going to? Is it peace? Is it for victory? What is that?
Um, Life, in a word, life with a capital L. Um, I say a lot that order without chaos is a desert, and chaos without order is a storm. Both are inhospitable. So let's say you're going through life with just chaos. It's going to be stormy. You're not going to be getting where you want to go because you don't have any direction at all. Let's say you're going through life with just order. It's going to be incredibly regimented, but it's not going to be worth doing. It's just going to be dull and strict and rigid. So the point, the purpose, the goal of bringing these two forces together is that's what living is, right? Like it's not about efficiency, and it's also not about just living in the moment with complete fluidity and just going with the flow. It's it's about leaving your own track. Um, this comes into what the purpose of life is, but the point of life is to leave your tracks in the dirt, right? Like a deer leaves his imprint in the soil, and his field track can read so much about the specifics of that deer. He can tell you if it's male or female, how old it is, how big it is, how fast it's moving, where it's going, what it's thinking. Like a really good tracker can tell so much because a track is such a profound, genuine imprint. It's a thumbprint. what that animal is, what it's doing in the context of its world. That's when you scale that up to a huge symbolic metaphor, that's the purpose of life, right? To leave our most profound, genuine track on the world. You can't leave a deliberate track without masculine order, but you also won't know what your most genuine track is without feminine chaos. So you bring these two together to be the most genuine and consequential self.
It's beautiful. Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. And it is interesting, especially in relationships. I feel like it's so beneficial to like to know all those things, to be aware of those things, because once you have that awareness within yourself, you'll be able to work on yourself, like to master yourself and to kind of find more connection with others. Because so often, like I mentioned before, yes, we do have those defenses where we want to project, maybe we don't want to, but sometimes we just do project our views, or we just project different things that is kind of like it's resisting that flow. So it is interesting how that balance is super important, because obviously, if for example, in terms of like dating and a relationship, it's not going to have any success if it's just like order. So like, it's a really interesting topic, and also like it comes back to the responsibility of the male. It's like the responsibility to kind of create order. Yeah, is that like a big thing that's important?
Is masculine order a big thing that's important?
Yeah.
Yes.
There are like so many different perspectives about like the feminism kind of journey to like, ethnic men, and then the going back to like the more traditional side of like respect the men. So it's like where should people kind of lean into?
Right. So here's my archetypal symbolic metaphorical understanding of cultural history for the last years. We were too deep into order, right? So the masculine, well, the masculine has a responsibility to create a structure, right? A structure which will reach a goal as direction, but also a structure which doesn't stifle the feminine. Okay, so it's not healthy for the masculine to be so rigid that the feminine can't flourish and thrive and inhabit her chaos. And it's not healthy for the feminine to be so chaotic that it's completely unanchored from the masculine or from order. We were in a world in the 19 teens and 20s, whatever, like the trad life that people are trying to get back to with social media. That's strict order, right? There's not a lot of room for chaos. There's not a lot of room for feminine wildness, I guess you could say. It's complete masculine structure. Marriage is completely masculine. It's rigid. The household roles are completely rigid. The business world is completely rigid. Religion is completely rigid. The institution of marriage is very legalized. Like that's all order. Pendulum swung. Chaos rebelled against the order because it was stifled and needed to spread its wings, breathe. So it rebelled. And then we get feminism. The pendulum swings all the way to the other end. And now it's complete chaos. Order is bad. Order is taboo. Don't tell me what to do. I have to be free and make it flow in a single way. Like nothing structure. And that's equally as bad, right? It's going from the desert to the storm. And so I forget the original question, but anyway, that's my view of it. Like eventually pendulum swings back and forth.
Yeah.
Reach a stable in between. Probably not on a cultural level, but as individuals, we absolutely can. So it just goes back to integrating both your internal feminine and your internal masculine. For the purposes of the masculine understanding the feminine and what it means, what its nature is, and how to structure the feminine appropriately so that a man can lead a woman in a healthy way. And also a woman integrating her own masculine so that she can understand the value of order, value of structure, value of masculinity in her life, and the value of anchoring her feminine chaos to the masculine structure in a way that helps everybody.
Yeah, that's so beautiful, and it's almost like simplicity at the core of it. It's like that's kind of how the universe works. I even wrote down a quote from, Jordan Peterson. I wrote down a quote. So she said, based on like responsibility, because like this responsibility, I feel like we all have the ability to like to own kind of responsible things. Like we have to, it's kind of like part of our purpose to be responsible for something. And he said it's in responsibility that most people find the meaning that sustains them through life. It's not happiness. It's not an impulsive pleasure. So I was like, wow, that's super interesting. It's like from chaos, you kind of have to steer your way towards unifying, towards unity. So it's really interesting that, yeah, like responsibility is a big thing. It's part of organizing the chaos into order.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's something we don't really. It's everything is your truth. Everything is what you want. You can be anything. You deserve everything. It's all chaos. It's just fluid, don't flow. What you feel in the moment is everything, and that's pure chaos and no order. And you're not going to be mature if that's your mindset. You're not going to be a healthy partner if that's your mindset.
right.
If a man who lives his life that way, it's not going to be. Um. So yeah, like exactly, responsibility is huge. You can't be mature without responsibility. It doesn't work. You can't be an adult without responsibility.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
like going back to the if the man takes full responsibility, then the woman remains juvenile. The masculine has to leave the feminine to responsibly actualize their chaos in a way that enriches the relationship without micro
Wow,
order.
that's amazing.
That's just stifling order.
That's like a beautiful thing for a man to say, by the way, because so often there is like an undercurrent of, well, a lot of toxic masculinity. It's like the obsession, the need to control, and it is part of their personality, but not maybe not to control the world, to control, your life journey, because that's where I feel like a lot of men do. They want to. It's in their DNA to control. It's like natural, but where they're steering their direction towards controlling, that's where it starts to become a little bit like confusing if they're controlling the wrong things. They're supposed to be on the journey toward finding their life purpose and feeling. Yeah, it's really interesting talking about like going back to like responsibility and independence. And we have Independence Day coming up here, so it's like it's really interesting that that awareness to find independence is also. And I also wrote down another biblical quote just like to see how it aligns with independence. And it's from 1 Corinthians 11:2. Woman is not independent of man, nor is man independent of woman. For just as woman came from man, so man comes through woman. But all things come from God. Judge for yourselves. That's like, oh, that's interesting. Because it's like when we do want that kind of like hyper independence, which is often like a trauma response, it's kind of like you have to accept the kind of synergy of each other. And I think like that whole thing about chaos and order, it's a beautiful reminder that we do need each other and we do need to kind of like work through each other's different aspects.
Yeah. And actually, that verse is interesting because it says that all women come from men and men come through women, but all things come from God, right?
Right.
Well, that implies that God is the integration of masculine and feminine.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And so if you're striving to be like God, you don't want to be extreme masculine. You don't want to be extreme feminine. You mix great both. And I think that's something that we've all lost in our culture is we think that we have this ridiculous idea that masculinity and femininity are two mutually exclusive sides of the spectrum. And if you are masculine, well, you can't be feminine because that excludes it. That's not true. And that's an irresponsible way to look at it. Because if you're all masculine, then you can't understand feminine and you can't lead feminine. And if you're all feminine, you don't understand masculine and you can't enrich masculine. You can't enrich the structure. So like we all need to inspire and develop both sides of ourselves. We all need to work to define. It's not that we have to be 50-50. A guy doesn't have to be 50-50 masculine and feminine.
Right.
But we all need some, like 80-20, Even 90-10 is something, but like 80-20, 75-25, that's pretty good. Um, and that's how you can actually relate to each other in a relationship and have uh, a healthy dance together in real life.
Yes, I totally agree. And when the feminine is kind of going through her chaos, and how she's supposed to find herself when she's like completely lost in her chaos, and she feels kind of like this is her role. She's chaotic, and she feels like this is totally like part of her identity and journey. How should she like, I guess, find an order within her chaos?
Um, are we assuming that she's not motivated to find order? Do we have to convince her?
I think so. Yeah, I feel like well, I feel like that's also let's do it for the group of people who are actually they want to find order. So they're aware enough and they're kind of like wanting to be influenced, but they might not because a lot of women do have kind of like emotional trauma, and sometimes it's so hard to kind of get out of that chaotic mindset.
Right.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
hmm. I would say that it helps a lot to study Jungian archetypes, the Jungian
Oh, yeah.
animus. Um, how does a woman who's so in her chaos relate to masculine? I think with that one, a lot of times you need to be exposed to raw reality. Um, chaos will smack you in the face repeatedly if you're not insulated from the consequences of your actions.
Yes.
And eventually you get sick of it. And you're like, okay, I need to grow up. I need to get some structure. I need to be better at this. But in our world, we insulate everyone just because we live in a civilized society, but especially women from consequences in a lot of ways. Um, and that doesn't help because they're not getting smacked by their own actions, and so they don't have to change their actions. With men, it's a little different. You can sort of get away with being uber structured because you're disciplined. You make the money. You become a Navy SEAL, right? Like you get what you think your goal was, and it's only when you get to the goal that you realize, wait, I'm not happy. This isn't fulfilling. I'm not doing what I really wanted to do.
Oh,
But I don't know what it's all, and I don't know all that. So for women, it's about consequences. For men, I think it's education. You have to sit them down, like grab them by the shoulders and shake them, and just be like, "You need to learn this, or else you're not going to live the life you want to live." Um, but our society isn't doing either. So
what do you think our society is teaching men these days?
shut up. I think that's it. I think society is telling men, "You had your time, and now we resent you, and you're not allowed to have a say. You're not allowed to be of any consequence. It's your turn to sit down, shut up. Women get to do whatever they want. And when we want you for something, we'll tell you. But other than that, stay out of the way."
Yeah,
That's the message a lot of guys are getting.
yeah, that's absolutely crazy. Yeah, I've also talked to guys who also felt like that. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. That's really, especially within the healthy male leader creates society, creates families and something. So it's like when you try to reject or neglect that main part of life, that's where chaos becomes like evident.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a rejection of masculinity, except what women want to do it. But we're not telling women how to do it well. Right, so it's a problem there too. Men
Yeah,
can't do it, but they also can't be feminine because if men become chaotic, well, that's a problem. And that's called toxic masculinity.
yeah,
Um, and so women get to be chaotic feminine, and they get to be chaotic masculine, and then there's no grounding, there's no anchor, there's no
that's so
direction.
yeah.
It's the pendulum swing.
Yeah, that's so true. I've had so many experiences with guys prior, and a lot of toxic masculinity, like just being like passive, and that like I'm naturally a little bit more masculine, so that angered me so much because like I felt comfortable being masculine in a way. So it can, lead a little bit, but like I'm aware that a man should be. I'm aware of the feminine role and masculine role. So when I kind of came across them, they were very passive in terms of like leading. That really angered me, and then like I kind of eating into my anger, and then I let myself be a little bit chaotic because it's like when I don't have that leadership from the masculine polarity, I don't feel comfortable taking charge because I feel like I already take charge within my own space, and I feel like the men should also not be taught. But there's also a balance. There's a dance also going on. So if you communicate and connect and you kind of go like, this is my personality, then that's fine. It's like you see if you can. But in general, I feel like how can men not be passive? And do they know? And like, do men even know that their passivity is kind of like toxic to women?
Uh,
All
a
men. It's
lot of
just like
men don't know because they've been told like different things about dating, like
right.
very politely, always accommodate them. Um,
Oh,
be uber consensual. Like you can never make a woman uncomfortable, right? And so much of like a masculine way to initiate an association with a woman does make her uncomfortable. Like approaching a girl in public will make her uncomfortable. Period. It's gonna happen. And so that makes it terrifying for a guy, not only because he's approaching a girl and that's scary, but also because like, what if she's uncomfortable? That becomes paralyzing because we're drilled, like it's drilled into us, never open our. But order is, you can't be disciplined without making yourself uncomfortable. And if you're going to be a masculine leader in a relationship, you're going to make your followers uncomfortable sometimes, because that's how structure works. And so, like that's something that never to fix is be willing to affect the world around you in ways that not everyone is going to be comfortable. Like it's women here, like you have the right to take up space, right? Men need to hear that message. Um, what else can I do about passing this? Um, Men have to be allowed to mess around, make mistakes, break things. Like that's huge. We're not allowed to do that in childhood. We can't break anything in kindergarten. Stay in line. And that's boys aren't designed for that. They're designed to be in the woods.
right.
Like they have to do it. We're very tactile creatures. We're so we need to touch things and breathe and feel things, smell things, taste things. When you do that outside, you don't do that in the classroom. And you can't do that in a classroom setting. Like you can't have a bunch of kids sitting in a circle in a field. You're outside, but like you're not engaging the world. You know? Boys need to play with the world. Um, at least that.
I love that.
Aspect of consequentiality is a big thing that I come back to over and over again. Um, what I mean by that word is you need to choose kind of and then actualize that effect. I want to start a business, boom, I start the business. I want to get a six pack, boom, I get the six pack. Like I make a decision and I make it have consequences on it. And it affects other people. It affects other things, right? Men are terrified of being consequential because their whole lives they've been told to color within the lines, stay on the sidewalks, look but don't touch, obey the rules, get permission before you do the thing. That's a domesticated male. And a domesticated male gives all his consequentiality to the willpower and the authority of an external force. And to a lot of men, that's really unhealthy. It took me a while to get over that, where I had to reclaim my consequentiality. It was my own will which decides what consequences I will have on the will and my needs. Not about permission. It's not about permits. It's not about what sidewalk is or what line can cover them in. I choose that side. And then I do it. Now, that's incredibly dangerous because that's like basic. And so you have to train men what consequences are worthwhile, what's healthy, what's mature, what's productive for society. Like you have to have a level of maturity and perspective to apply this way. But not applying it at all is just as unhealthy as applying it dangerously. Like it's being a man is a lot. It's a very complex task. Um,
Yeah.
and we're just completely ignoring it. And you can't ignore it.
Wow, this is like such beautiful things you said. Yes, I totally agree. And it's so refreshing to hear that perspective, that really like high level awareness. Yeah, the wisdom you just said, it's so beautiful, and I feel like a lot of people will really learn a lot because nobody's learning these kind of things the way that it's been structured and it's been changed, it's been altered. Now it's like this artificial version of masculinity. It's kind of like inauthentic, and it's just it's not fully integrated to have an experience the best of the best of life. It's like if you're limiting the masculine males within their if they're able to create, that's also going to create so much chaos because it's like the men do need to kind of be exposed to that full possibility. And that's like such a great point. If boys are being taught this stuff, like what you're saying, if they are going to be taught these things, they're going to grow up in such a different way. They're going to be so much more confident. They're going to be aware of their gifts and what it can offer to the world. And they're going to be even more respectful because they're going to respect themselves first. If men are taught to kind of lean into their authenticity and to be rambunctious in a given state that they're allowed to be in. So they're not going to be scared. And it's like when men are kind of programmed to respond or react with a fear, they're obviously going to be suppressed. So then it creates complete chaos later on. So this is really interesting. And I saw that you also posted something about women, saying that women don't need therapy. They need to sit around the campfire weaving baskets and listening to the village granny tell overly dramatized stories about life. And I was like, wow, this is very interesting because I know, like, with the whole world of therapy, everybody's like, therapy is great, go to talk therapy. And I guess that is true. It's I guess it depends on the level of trauma people experience. But this is like what you wrote down. It's so beautiful and such a like. I never even thought about that idea of going back to your roots, going back to nature within a community setting. It's so true. Like it's super healing, and I don't even know why it's like that, but it's true. I feel like the feminine and the woman do kind of reset when they're grounded and when they're around people learning about connecting with the ancestral lands and their family. It's such a beautiful reminder. How did you like become aware of that? Even like what made you kind of connect to that realization? Because I had even like no idea how beautiful that is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know a lot of girls who are perpetual therapy goers. And the more you talk to them, the more you kind of think that they're being victimized by a cult.
Right.
Like, it has, that's, but the point of therapy is to stop going to therapy.
Yeah.
Like, the point of therapy is not just go to therapy. You just get engaged with a therapist because see everybody else who doesn't go to therapy chronically as an outsider and of them, and like that's not healthy. This goes back to my theory that human nature is a blobfish, which is not the sexiest metaphor. I have to come up with a better one. But you know how a blobfish is a deep sea creature, and it looks like a normal fish on the bottom of the ocean because it's got all this water pressure pressing up against it. And then you pull it up out of the ocean, and it looks like a blob. It's shapeless, it's formless, it's not going to be able to survive. Like, you can't swim or can't hide.
Mm-hmm.
A blobfish needs the pressure, okay? Human nature is the same way. We are designed for contention with a wild world, the wilderness. We're designed for the pressures of social expectations and standards and scrutiny and shame, all these things. We're designed for the pressures of uh, expectation from like our tribe needs you to be a warrior. You are going to be a warrior. Like we're designed for those pressures. And the whole purpose of civilization is to insulate people from those pressures, right? So like agriculture insulated us from the need to constantly hunt and to go hungry sometimes and to like chase down wild game and pick up a mammoth and carry it back to camp on your shoulder. Like that's hard. That's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of stuff we have to take on. And agriculture fixed that. Nice, they'll farm, but like it's less pressure. Um, with society, like it's a lot of pressure to be around people all the time. Like a tribe of 150, and everybody's known you forever. And if you ruin your reputation, then your reputation's ruined. And like, what are you gonna do about it? Like that's a lot. And women, especially, women talk a lot about like uh, toxic femininity and like women hating on each other and having unrealistic expectations and all this thing. Well, yes, it's out of control now because of social media and because we're interacting with strangers all the time and all this stuff. In a village setting, it's different because we know each other and we're all working together there. But the pressures are still there. There's still the expectations. There's still a standards of culture. And so with mass societies, like I said, it's all still nobody knows you're in a vacuum. You can do whatever you want, do whatever you want. And reputation isn't a factor. It's insulation from the pressures again. And so human nature has become this blobfish because it's shapeless now. There's no pressure of holding us together in this shape that we're supposed to be in. Because we just insulated ourselves from those pressures. And so now it's formless and shapeless, useless. And it's not healthy. We can't live this way.
Yeah, that's not attractive. That's really interesting. Like I remember I grew up like going to ballet schools when I was little. We had classes like, every day, and that's like kind of like you mentioned pressure. There was pressure every day. We had to have bar classes, and we had to have point shoes. We had to do points at the bar. We talk to the center, and it's like these things are repetitive and they're kind of similar. So we had to kind of it was like training, and that I feel like training is so good for men and women for whatever different fields that they enjoy doing because, like you mentioned, that's the pressure that really helps to create muscles, create a different, even like belief system, how we think, how we respond to the world, our nerves and our cells, everything is like built in a very unique way. And only now, as an adult, I'm beginning to realize, like, wow, the value of going to dance class and that discipline is so huge. And when I was younger, I didn't think that at all. I just went there because I loved it. I just loved dancing, and that's also like therapy as well. For me, that was like I was able to move with the music, to connect to the rhythm, and to feel my body, to feel how my body moves with the music. And again, it's like that space. We have to take up space. Both men and women have to feel comfortable expressing themselves within their given space and to feel that safety. It's also a beautiful thing. And within the pressure, that I think creates a healthy human being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And one of the reasons why like the modern world today is so bad with this is because you can work from home, which I love work from home. I'm a little bit of a hypocrite, but you can work from home. And so nobody ever sees you, so you don't take risks. All your friends are online. And so like they don't have to see you getting out of shape, looking a bit disheveled, drinking every day. Like nobody's there to judge you. Your job isn't holding you to an ethical standard. There's just such a lack. Everybody can be so isolated, and being isolated is more fun. Like it just is. Not having the pressures feels better than having the pressures. But it's basically like a gym. Like not going to the gym feels a whole lot better than going to the gym, but not long term.
Right.
So like nobody wants to willingly submit themselves to the hardship, but it's the hardship that makes us strong and virile. And so, in a civilized world, you need to reject your natural instinctive inclinations, which is awful. I think that's a horrendous position to put yourself in. And so a lot of my philosophy is it's not so much about discipline, but it's about context. Submit yourself through the natural processes, and you will become better for it. As opposed to insulate yourself from the natural processes, but discipline yourself to kind of quasi recreate them. Like that, I guess you can, but I think that's not what we're designed for.
Right. That's so true. And like, how would you describe it is the best way to be like spiritual or to be aligned with the universe? How do you define spirituality? Yeah.
Oh, how do I define spirituality?
Yes. Because so many of our listeners are kind of like going on a spiritual journey and like learning about
Most well. I think spirituality is basically the belief and behaviors associated with the realization that divinity exists. What is divinity? Well, that's a tricky one. The Lakota Sioux in the Great Plains called their god Wampanoag, which translates to the Great Mystery. And I think that's the absolute best term anyone could come up with for God. Because we don't know. Like, imagine a squirrel trying to figure out meteorology. It's not going to work. The squirrel doesn't have that mental capacity. And we, as finite human animal beings, like, of course we don't have the cognitive ability to deduce God. Like, we don't understand this. And so it's such hubris to try to nail down what God even is. People they do try with religions and stuff. They try to get definitions, but inherently a definition becomes misleading. Because anything you try to nail down about the nature of what divinity is, it's coming through the medium of language, and language isn't designed for that. So, so it really is just the great mystery. I don't know. As a human being, I can't know, regardless of whether or not I'm Einstein. I can't wrap my head around that. I'm a squirrel trying to conceptualize meteorology. But the great thing is, this isn't my job. I don't have to know the nature of God. I can know things about God. Like, the squirrel can tell that rain is wet and that wind is windy. Like, I can know things about God, but I can't know what God means. So, spirituality. It's your relationship with that mystery. How do you engage with it? How do you live according to it? Where do you find it? How do you align with it? I think that's what spirituality is.
Wow, that is beautiful and it's so authentically honest. And it is true. Like a lot of animals are very spiritual, and I feel like they can sense the weather changes like before humans can. Before we have earthquake or hurricane or something, they can already sense it. So I feel like they're a little bit closer to like the spiritual realms in a way than humans, which is very interesting. But yeah, but it's so true. And I like your response. It's such an eager response in some ways like spirituality, let me tell you. Because it's like that's true, like nobody actually knows. And that's like such an refreshing, honest approach to that because we're obviously trying to be ourselves, we're trying to be humans, trying to learn the universe, learn ourselves, learn how to communicate, integrate to everything. So I think so too. It's just trying to connect with that mystery and to be inspired to keep evolving and being with yourself. Kind of like learning your slow lessons and distributing in a response. And where can people connect with you and to see your amazing content?
Well, right now I'm mostly on Twitter at Of Life and Wild. I do have a website. It's very bare bones. I'm just building it, and I don't know how to build websites. So I've got a couple of things on there. I'm starting to build a blog. I'm writing a book. I've got some
Oh,
like order of chaos, business scenes. So that's all on the website. And the website is linked on my Twitter profile. It's oflifeandwalla.com. So basically, go to Twitter. You'll find everything on there. Um, yeah, that's where I am so far.
okay, perfect. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It was such a beautiful conversation, and I personally learned so much. And I feel like our listeners who are on the journey of healing and learning and spirituality, I feel like they're gonna gain such a beautiful amount of knowledge and wisdom from a fellow masculine. So thank you for sharing your beautiful insights and your knowledge with all of us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.